Chapter 1445. Night gradually fell. A full moon hung high in the dark starry sky, dotted with many stars, forming a picturesque scene. Although it wasn't as beautiful as the starry sky in the courtyard, it was rare to see so many stars in modern times. However, in the starry sky dotted with the full moon and stars, apart from the stars, there were also dark clouds. The dark clouds drifted with the wind and covered the stars from time to time, gradually moving in the direction of the full moon. It seemed that sooner or later, the full moon would be covered by the dark clouds. But at least for now, the starry sky was still very bright and beautiful. Presumably, it would arouse the interest of many people and make them admire it. Noah was also looking at the starry sky. In one of the rooms on the highest floor of the hotel, Noah looked at the full moon and stars in the night sky through the window as he spoke with a wry smile. Impulse is the devil. Although he didn't want to admit it. Only Noah himself knew what kind of mood he was in now. I feel a little restless. Frankly speaking, Noah was no longer a virgin. In terms of experience alone, Noah, who had two delicate fiancées, would be able to enjoy the service of Mira and Lisanna almost every time he returned to the guild. Just the thought of it was enough to captivate him. Logically speaking, with this kind of experience, Noah should be more at ease. But now, Noah was indeed a little restless. If it was under normal circumstances, Noah wouldn't be like this. However, instead of saying that the situation back then was normal, it was more appropriate to say that it was the most abnormal development. Suddenly, he was asked to take in a concubine. Suddenly, it developed to the point where he needed to spend a long night with someone whom he had barely had any contact with and whom he had only met a few times. Let alone having a heart-to-heart talk and understanding each other, even Noah could not help but feel speechless at the development of the situation. At that time, under the situation that he was angered by Luo Hao, Noah made such a request in revenge, intending to dampen Luo Hao's spirit. Who knew that Luo Hao would be so easily provoked and jump into the pit? In this way, Noah couldn't back down. No matter what, although this result was all kinds of scams, if Noah backed down, he might have been directly choked by Luo Hao. Anyway, I'm not the one who's at a disadvantage. Noah couldn't help but laugh bitterly when he said such an excuse that all men in the world would find. If Mira and Lisanna find out, they'll definitely be angry, right? Of course, as long as Noah was willing to spend time coaxing them, Mira and Lisanna would definitely forgive Noah. Not long after he confirmed his relationship with Mira and Lisanna, Noah told his two fiancées about the Elysium. In fact, before they confirmed their relationship, Mira and Lisanna could vaguely guess that Noah had a concern in his heart based on his words and actions. After confirming their relationship, Noah told Mira and Lisanna about the Elysian prince. Of course, Noah only mentioned the Elysian prince. He didn't reveal the fact that the Elysian prince was in existence from another world. Noah felt that there was no need to reveal anything about the world between worlds at the moment. Because of this, Mira and Lisanna knew about the existence of the Elysian child, as well as the 3-year agreement between Noah and the Elysian child. These two delicate fiancés had said that no matter what the final result was, as long as the Holy Son fulfilled this 3-year promise, they would choose to accept. However, because of this, Noah was controlled by his two fiancés for a period of time with all kinds of resentment. If Noah really did all kinds of things with Luo Hao tonight, Noah definitely wouldn't hide it from Mira and Lisanna when they returned. This was also Mira and Lisanna's request. Compared to knowing that you have another lover outside, I feel that it's more heartbreaking to have you hide this from us. So, brother Noah, no matter what, you're not allowed to hide it from us. These were the words that the two delicate fiancés said with smiles on their faces after hearing about the Elysian prince. That was the first time Noah felt fear, and he immediately nodded his head like he was pounding garlic. Therefore, Noah wouldn't hide this kind of thing from them. Besides, Mira and Lisanna were the kind of girls who weren't smart and were instead a little stupid, but their intuition was frighteningly good. If Noah really did have sex with another woman, even if he took 100 baths and shed his skin, those two girls would probably smell something out with their terrifying intuition. In Lasana's words, it would be, don't underestimate the person who sleeps next to you. No matter what, she is the person who is closest to you even when sleeping. That was why it was said that women were an extremely inconceivable creature at all times. However, while Noah felt that it was funny, he was also very touched. At the very least, it proved that Mira and Lisanna had invested a lot of feelings in Noah. Otherwise, they wouldn't accept their fiancé to be in such a state. Although, if you're angry, you'll definitely be angry. Just as Noah was thinking about this, a voice entered his ears. I've already gotten so close to you, but you actually didn't notice. King Noah, sometimes I really wonder if you're strong or immature. This voice directly woke Noah up. Immediately, Noah turned his head almost reflexively. Then, the scene that was imprinted into Noah's eyes made Noah's heart suddenly skip a beat. The person who came was naturally Luo Hao. Luo Hao, who had appeared in Noah's room at some point, was wearing a bathrobe, but it was very thin, as if it was woven with a piece of translucent cloth. Through this thin garment, Noah could even very clearly see the color of Luo Hao's fair skin that was covered by the thin garment. The curves from her waist to her buttocks were exceptionally clear and very attractive. If Luo Hao hadn't hugged her arms in front of her body, her full and round breasts would have been clearly seen. Looking at Luo Hao like this, even Noah had a dry mouth. Originally, Luo Hao had a devastatingly beautiful appearance. In terms of appearance, among all the people Noah had seen in his life, Luo Hao was a peerless beauty who wouldn't lose to anyone. Moreover, Luo Hao's figure was really not bad. Although she wasn't very tall and her figure was very slender, the ratio of her three measurements was extremely perfect, making Luo Hao's limbs look so exquisite and attractive. In addition, the king of Wuxia, who usually had a majestic performance, was now showing a sense of shyness. That contrast really made people feel a rush of blood. Presumably, in Luo Hao's country, such an existence should be the so-called femme fatale level. She was a beauty who could make the emperor forget about politics and immerse himself in her gentleness and beauty. Even if he was angered by Luo Hao several times, Noah, who didn't have a good impression of Luo Hao, was a little surprised. This was enough to prove this point. Seeing Noah staring at her, Luo Hao's hands in front of her body tightened slightly, and the skin under the thin garment seemed to be a little red. Noah King, don't misunderstand. The reason why I used divine feet to enter your room was because I didn't want the servants to see me in this state. I didn't want to assassinate you, so you can rest assured. So, please look away from that sharp gaze of yours. Luo Hao thought that Noah was looking at her intently because he suspected that Luo Hao wanted to harm him, so he was secretly vigilant. However, Noah really didn't stare at Luo Hao because of this. Originally, Noah was still hesitant to have such a relationship with Luo Hao. But now, the hesitation in Noah's heart has disappeared little by little with Luo Hao's appearance in this dress. This made Noah feel sad that he was still a man, and at the same time, he smiled bitterly at Luo Hao's words for the third time. Could it be that you've never thought that I'm just mesmerized by your posture? This sentence made Luo Hao startled at first, then she raised her eyebrows slightly. I almost forgot that you are a person who is attracted by worldly things. I thought you were a king who wouldn't waver even in the face of beauty. You think too highly of me. Noah shook his head. I said that I am a person, and a man at that. I won't waver in the face of any beauty. That's all fake. With such a sentence, Noah raised his head with a faint smile, looked at Luo Hao, and said, It's just that I didn't expect that you would come in this dress. It seems that you are really prepared. Don't think that only you men can keep your word. I, Luo Hao, will never go back on my word. Luo Hao lowered her head, and her delicate body trembled slightly with her hands around it. So, King Noah, if you don't intend to deprive me of my last trace of dignity, then don't make me take the initiative to ask for your favor, okay? This sentence finally ignited the flame in Noah's heart. At that moment, Noah stepped forward and hugged Luo Hao into his arms. The light went out unknowingly. A thin robe fluttered to the ground, causing the temperature in the air to become somewhat hot. Tonight was destined to be long. Chapter 1446. The next day. After waking up from his sleep, Noah's hazy consciousness began to wake up. Because an indescribable fragrance rushed into the tip of Noah's nose along with the sound of breathing, causing Noah's consciousness to wake up in an instant. Immediately afterward, Noah felt an extremely soft and elastic delicate body snuggling tightly against him. This feeling made Noah's gradually sobering head suddenly surge into the extremely wonderful memory of last night. It was indeed quite wonderful. Let the peerless, self-respecting Chinese Wulian Alliance master gasp for breath under his body. The taste was simply indescribable. Recalling the wonderful taste of last night, Noah's expression became somewhat comfortable. He lowered his head and looked at his arms. In Noah's arms, Luo Hao, who was naked and covered with only a sheet, was lying there, her red lips unconsciously moaning. Her cheeks were that seductive crimson. Her skin was also a little flushed. Luo Hao's long hair that was as black as the night was like a waterfall that hung down along her slender and beautiful waist. It was wet from the sweat that covered Luo Hao's curvaceous back, making her look exceptionally lovable. Looking at Luo Hao, who was sleeping very peacefully like a little girl, Noah stroked her smooth and slender back and couldn't help but sigh. Undoubtedly, it's so cute. Noah admitted that he did admire Luo Hao's spirit and magnanimity in wuxia. However, this wuxia king did have some shortcomings in terms of personality. His self-awareness was too high, and he was extremely lacking in self-awareness. In the eyes of others, this was undoubtedly a tyrant who was difficult to serve. Noah also had such an idea yesterday. However, now, Noah no longer had a bad impression of Luo Hao's personality, but some helplessness. It's not impossible to be self-centered, but if you're too willful, otherwise, how can you get along with ordinary people in the future? At the very least, this kind of self-centered attitude must be looked at. If she had a high and mighty attitude in front of Noah's companions, then Noah couldn't stand it. I have to think of a way to teach this girl a lesson. With this thought in mind, Noah's hand unconsciously slid across Luo Hao's extremely elastic and smooth back, causing Luo Hao's eyelids to tremble slightly. Soon after, she slowly opened her eyes. That pair of eyes no longer had their previous majesty and valiance, and had been replaced by a watery gentleness. Regardless of whether it was the past, present, or future, the only person who could make Luo Hao reveal such an attitude was Noah. As if sensing that Luo Hao had woken up, Noah snapped out of his daze and looked at the person in his arms. "Are you awake?" Hearing Noah's voice, Luo Hao was first stunned for a moment before coming back to her senses. Looking at Noah, who was looking at her with a smile that was not a smile, and then looking at the two of them hugging each other tightly, Luo Hao finally recalled what happened last night, and her pretty face turned slightly red. "So that's how it is. I, Luo Hao, have finally committed myself to someone else and have a place that belongs to me." Luo Hao, who said such words with a slightly red face, no longer had the arrogance and majesty of the past. She only had the shyness of an ordinary girl. Compared to the past, it could be said that it was a shocking contrast. Noah couldn't help but feel that it was a little cute. The hand that was holding Luo Hao tightened a little, and he kissed her red lips. Ugh! Luo Hao's eyes widened in surprise, and then more moisture appeared in her eyes. Even her delicate body seemed to have lost its strength and softened. By the time she reacted, Luo Hao discovered that her teeth had been pried open, and her tongue had been captured by Noah and was being tasted with relish. This made Luo Hao's body even more powerless. However, Luo Hao still resisted the weakness of her body. With a red face, she tried her best to push Noah away. After panting a few times, she glared at Noah. Seeing this, Noah was a little curious. Now that things have come to this, what are you still dissatisfied with? Are you doubting my tolerance again? Luo Hao said somewhat angrily. I've already said it many times. Since Luo Zuilian has promised to become your concubine, then I won't have any complaints. If you doubt me again, then it's really too rude. Is that so? Noah said as he hugged Luo Hao tightly. If that's the case, then why are you still rejecting my love for you? It's an honor as a wife to be able to receive love from my husband. Luo Hao's pretty face was slightly red, but she looked at Noah very seriously. However, my husband, you're still an unparalleled ruler. You can't immerse yourself in the land of gentleness. Since you and I are already husband and wife, then we should treat each other with respect. You can't become a stumbling block on your king's path because of me. Please remember this. Hearing this, Noah was a little helpless. It really sounds like something Luo Hao would say. Although this king of Wuxia had a side that was arbitrary and had no self-awareness, no matter what, she was still a Wuxia grandmaster and a traditional woman who had been standing in the land of China for a full 200 years. Even if there were some problems with the concept of being a king, it was not like she did not have the self-awareness of being a woman. Now Luo Hao is like a woman who will silently give and support behind a man. With Luo Hao's view of the identity of a king, it seems natural that she would say such words. Undoubtedly, she has a strong sense of being a Wuxia king and a woman, but why doesn't she have the slightest understanding of being a tyrant? Noah felt incredulous while hugging Luo Hao tightly and said so. Listen to me carefully. If a man will let the woman who loves him become a stumbling block, then this man has already failed. Only if he can handle this kind of thing well can he stand out. Do you think I'm the kind of useless person who will be reluctant to leave the land of gentleness and ignore the court? But you have an excessive obsession with worldly things. Luo Hao shook her head. I'm worried that you will sink deeper and deeper because of this and eventually can't extricate yourself. Isn't there a saying in your country that you can only make a name for yourself after going through a disaster? Noah retorted. If I stay out of it from the beginning, it's just an escape. For me, no matter what it is, I have to experience it. Only then can I see myself, others, and even everything clearly. Well, my husband also has his own ideas. Luo Hao said helplessly. In that case, as a married woman, I shouldn't be an obstacle to you. Don't keep saying that you're an obstacle. Noah curled his lips. In words you can understand, I think, whether it's a person or a king, as long as you can do it with a clear conscience to the world, with a clear conscience to your parents, and with a clear conscience to the world, then you are qualified no matter what. A clear conscience. A clear conscience to his parents. Even more so, a clear conscience to the world. Luo Hao suddenly muttered, and then, she cast a praising gaze towards Noah. It seems that I was confused. Since I thought that my husband would fall because of worldly matters, since my husband has such self-awareness, then I am relieved. After he finished speaking, Luo Hao got up from Noah's embrace, and before Noah could react, he broke free from the blanket and got off the bed. Just like that, the peerless beauty, who was capable of causing the downfall of a nation, exposed herself to Noah's line of sight. Immediately after, her gentle and beautiful body suddenly turned around. As Luo Hao spun around in a circle, a set of feather-like Han clothes suddenly appeared on her body, covering her incomparably alluring body, causing the hem of her skirt to flutter lightly. That scene was simply like that of a fairy. Since Luo Zuilian has already become a married woman, then she should no longer appear in public in front of the world. Luo Hao's eyes seemed to linger on Noah's body as they flashed with extraordinary splendor. My husband, Luo Zuilian, is going back to Mount Lu. Although I am only your concubine, I hope you don't forget that in this life, you are the only one who can make Luo Tzuelian willingly submit herself to you. Farewell. With that, Luo Hao waved her long sleeves, and beautiful petals flashed around her, covering her entire body as she disappeared from the spot. Until she left, Luo Hao was worthy of her status as a king, and she left without the slightest bit of reluctance. Looking at the direction Luo Hao disappeared in, Noah couldn't help but say this with some resentment. Undoubtedly, I want to do it again. Chapter 1447. In any case, although Luo Hao was extremely lacking in self-awareness, she did not hesitate in the slightest. Undoubtedly, she had spent the night with Noah, but when she left, she did not have a trace of nostalgia. She did not give the feeling of being heartless, but left very valiantly. Since even the girl was not so hesitant, Noah, as a man, if he still showed a hesitant look, it would be really inappropriate. So, although it was a little regretful, Noah still got rid of the association in his heart, got up, dressed neatly, and walked in the direction of the door. The great sage, heaven's equal, had been dealt with. However, that did not mean that everything had been solved. Because of the appearance of the great sage, heaven's equal, Guinevere came to the island. With the keen sense of the god ancestor as the demon queen, perhaps the other party had already noticed that the last king was in this country. That was hard to say. Under such circumstances, Guinevere would cause some commotion sooner or later. Noah had a grudge with Guinevere. In addition, when he planned to stay in this country, Noah had already made a promise to the official history compilation committee that he would help solve the problems that ordinary humans could not solve. For public or private reasons, Noah had to temporarily entangle with Guinevere. Moreover, Guinevere was definitely not the only one who came to this country. Noah believed that the Black Prince who had been watching Guinevere must have also come to this country. With Yarek's personality, Noah felt that the guy must be hiding in the dark, waiting for an opportunity to attack at any time. As for the target of the attack, it was either Noah who held the Holy Grail, or Guinevere who had a grudge with him. Therefore, at first glance, it seemed that everything had been solved, but it was just the calm before the storm. The appearance of the great sage, heaven's equal, was just a prelude. The real turmoil was about to begin. For this reason, Noah also needed to make some preparations. There was only a short day left before the end of the adaptation time. In order to cope with the growing turmoil, Noah believed that the power of authority was absolutely necessary. If he couldn't use his authority, then even Noah would be in danger in the upcoming chaos. Therefore, Noah had to make some preparations on the last day before the end of the authority's adaptation period. First of all, let the official history committee investigate the whereabouts of Guinevere and Yarek. With this thought in mind, Noah walked to the front of the door and extended his hand. Just as he was about to open the door, a conversation suddenly sounded from outside the door. "All right, Yoli, let's hurry inside." Now. Of course it's now. Don't you usually bring breakfast to His Majesty at this time and eat with His Majesty? But Mr. Noah and Lord Hierarch might still be resting. That's true. If we barge in like this, we might see some things that children shouldn't see, something that a child shouldn't see. It's the scene where His Majesty and the sect leader make love. Don't be so blunt. You're too shameless. Listening to the shy and flustered conversation between the two, Noah couldn't help but blush. It couldn't be helped. Yesterday, when Noah angrily asked Luo how to come over at night to serve him, Yoli, Ganji Dongma, and Lu Yinghua were also present. In other words, the fact that Noah and Luo Hao had a night of intercourse was no secret. At that time, Noah didn't think much about it. Under Luo Hao's provocation, he said those words regardless of the fact that there was a third party present. Now, thinking about it carefully, in front of so many people, asking Luo how to come over at night to serve him was simply teaching a child a bad lesson. With Yoli's innocence, she was probably in a mess now, right? And listening to Huey's shy voice, it seemed that even this girl who grew up in nature was not very comfortable with love between men and women. Noah could now imagine what kind of impression he had left in the hearts of the two pure girls. When he thought of the two girls who were a few years younger than him outside the door, hesitating whether to come in or not, in case they saw something they shouldn't see, Noah felt awkward. Fortunately, Luo Hao had already left. Otherwise, just now, if Noah was really in the mood and dragged Luo Hao for a while in broad daylight, and then attracted Yoli and Hui Na's eavesdropping, it would make people want to die. At that moment, Noah suppressed the awkwardness in his heart, pretended to be calm, and directly opened the door. Ah! Ah! The next moment, two exclamations sounded at the same time. Noah, Yoli, and Hui Na's gazes instantly met. The atmosphere suddenly became extremely awkward. Yoli and Huey's pretty faces turned red in the blink of an eye. No, 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 no. Mr. Noah. Yoli's face was red as she shouted in a panic. You. Are you already up? Yes, I'm up. Noah laughed dryly. Speaking of which, when will I get up, don't you already know? But. Hui Na's face was also red as she smiled shyly. Today, the king is not the only one in the king's room. Hui Na's words made Yoli lower her head with a red face. Then, she immediately raised her head and glared at Noah. You really don't have the self-awareness of a king. How dare you act so recklessly and completely disregard the impact of your words and actions on the people around you? You really have no sense of shame. What do you mean by no sense of shame? Noah retorted. Isn't it normal for a man and a woman to make love? Please don't be so straightforward. Yoli said shyly. Even if you want to do that kind of thing, please look at the situation. Is there a problem with the situation? Noah was amused and couldn't help but tease. Isn't this a hotel? Ah. Hui Na said in surprise. So this is a hotel for that kind of purpose? Of course not. Yoli vetoed loudly. His gaze on Noah became fiercer and fiercer. Anyway, you are really too impure. You better reflect on yourself. This sentence was immediately met with a sarcastic voice. You actually want the Demon King, the God Slayer, to reflect on himself. You should at least know what's good for you. Or do you really dare to question the Demon King's decision? Following this sentence, Lu Yinghua's figure slowly walked over from the other end of the corridor. Once he appeared, Lu Yinghua looked at Noah with an extremely respectful gaze. He clasped his fist and knelt down on one knee. With an unprecedentedly grand etiquette, he bowed deeply to Noah. Grand Master, please accept a bow from your disciple, Lu Yinghua. Grand Master. Noah was stunned. In response, Lu Yinghua maintained his kneeling posture and said matter-of-factly. Since my master is Sir's concubine, then Sir is naturally my Grand Master. Ah. Noah did not know what to say for a while. Then, Lu Yinghua raised his head and said to Noah with a rare flattering smile. Just now, my master used the secret method of transmitting sound to me from 1,000 miles away. She told me that I must announce to the world that the leader of the martial arts world in the land of China has a good relationship with my grandmaster. I must let the world know that my grandmaster is the real king who can subdue the wuxia king who is the best in martial arts in the world. I must strengthen my grandmaster's reputation. Announce to the world. Noah was really shocked. Luo Hao actually gave such an order. Yes, now, your disciple is also preparing to follow my master's footsteps. When the time comes, I will naturally announce to the world the grandmaster's power. Lu Yinghua nodded respectfully. Then, your disciple will take his leave. After saying this, Lu Yinghua was like a supporting actor leaving the stage. In order not to hinder Noah, the protagonist, in a flash, he disappeared. He left very quickly. Wait. Noah did not have time to stop him at all. Liu Yinghua had already left. Noah could already foresee it. How shocked and surprised would the so-called world be when they learned of this news? Why did this kind of thing have to be announced to the world? Noah could only look in the direction where Liu Yinghua disappeared with the corner of his mouth twitching. Then, he looked at Yoli and Huina, who were looking at him with shame and admiration. He was speechless for a long time. Chapter 1448. Is that so? Noah scratched his cheek. At this moment, an elegant voice sounded softly and slowly. Noah was stunned for a moment, and then he exclaimed in surprise. As this voice sounded, a noble woman slowly appeared outside the door. An eerie silence filled the air. Moreover, Yoli also used a spell to help Huina recover, so one day is enough. Compared to the sudden destruction and disaster brought by a sudden impulse, this kind of God's unfolding was just a small matter for those who were afraid of the Demon King, right? Don't worry, Yoli. This time, Huina was asked by grandfather to be the king's follower. Based on this, grandfather should be willing to lend his power to Huina. She was a very beautiful Caucasian woman with long blonde hair that reached her waist. She was wearing elegant clothes and exuded an elegant temperament. If Huina wants to use the secret technique of inviting God to descend, she must often go to the mountains to cultivate, right? Such a sentence made Yoli and Huina look at each other, and then they smiled bitterly. There was no other way. Who would have expected such an unfolding? Thinking of this, Noah felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. He had to find a topic to divert her attention. Moreover, before going down the mountain, the people from the committee said that Huina may need to work for a long time. Therefore, Huina used the Qingqiu courtyard's spiritual spring to cleanse her body in advance so that her body is full of spiritual energy for a long time. Huina looked carefree. The burden of borrowing God's power should not be small. Will it take only one day to fully recover? It's not enough to just rest, but Huina used a spell to help her recover, Huina said. In the battle with Liu Yinghua, Huina used the secret technique of inviting God to descend to borrow God's power, so it put a great burden on her body. If Noah was just an ordinary person, Yoli and Huina would have looked at Noah with strange eyes. Now, a day had passed, and he didn't know how Huina's condition was recovering. All right, it's my fault. It's indeed meaningless to compare humans with gods. Huina is already quite amazing among humans. I know that. To humans, that's already quite an impressive achievement. To us, Huina is also quite an impressive person. Please don't compare Huina to the demon kings who can fight against the gods. And that was the beginning of this atmosphere. Looking at Noah's repentant look, Yoli and Huina couldn't help but smile as if they were amused. If I continue to be silent like this, I'm sure I'll be the one who can't stand it first, right? Seeing this woman, Yoli and Huina were stunned. By the way, Huina, is there anything wrong with your body? Noah was suddenly speechless. He could only raise his hand in surrender. Unfortunately, Noah was a god slayer, a demon king who was not surprising in the eyes of others no matter what he did. However, even if her body recovers, can Huina still continue to use the secret technique of invite God to descend? Yoli's attention was also successfully diverted. She finally stopped blushing and looked at Huina rather worriedly. However, no matter what, for the whole night yesterday, a man and a woman were having an affair in this room. That was something that couldn't be denied. Anyway, Noah didn't think that it would develop like this until last night. Huina couldn't even stay in the human city for more than a month. It was very difficult. The reason why Huina grew up in the mountains from a young age was because of this. That's good. Yoli was relieved. Although Huina had only been in the human city for a few days, as Noah's follower, it was entirely possible that the head of the witches wouldn't be able to return to the mountains within a month. After a month, the beautiful girl who was known as the best lady in Europe and was respectfully called the princess finally appeared in front of Noah again. At that moment, Noah looked at Hui Na and asked in a casual manner, avoiding the topic. "No." Seeing the two witches blushing and not daring to look at the surrounding scene, worried that they would see something bad while silently eating, Noah also sighed in his heart. For the king, the power that Hui Na borrowed is naturally nothing. Hui Na said in a rare tone of annoyance. Understanding Yoli's concern, Hui Na explained in a cheerful tone. "I haven't seen you for a month. I thought you were hiding somewhere. It turns out that you are here. You even killed the disobedient great sage equaling heaven. You are indeed the demon king who can even take down 3 of his kind in one fell swoop. After all, the divine power that Hui Na can borrow is only a few 10,000ths of this level of power." "Alice?" Noah curled his lips a little. It's inappropriate to compare humans with the god-slaying demon king from any aspect, even if he's one of the best among humans. From this point of view, Lord Noah has recently stirred up an incident that isn't inferior to the god-slaying demon king's name. That is to say, even if he stayed in the human city for more than a month, Susanu would not lend his power to Hui Na just because her body and mind were stained with filth. It should be said that the inexplicable one was actually Luo Hao. Physical condition. Hui Na was slightly startled, and then her attention was successfully diverted by Noah. She answered with an innocent smile. The reason for this atmosphere was naturally Noah. However, for Noah, this atmosphere was a bit unbearable. As a result, as soon as she came back yesterday, Hui Na went back to her room to rest. However, this level of power has already made Hui Na the leader of the witches in this country, and even comparable to the mythological beast. Chapter 1449. In the room, Yoli took a teapot and poured steaming tea into the teacups in front of Noah and Alice, who were sitting opposite each other. Then she obediently stepped aside and stood behind Noah with Hui Na. Alice, who was sitting opposite Noah, looked at Yoli and Hui Na with curious eyes and spoke to Noah. "Are these two the witches Yuan of the Japanese spell world? Are they your new entourage?" When Alice mentioned them, Yoli couldn't help but be a little nervous. Even Hui Na's expression was a little subtle. Alice Louise of Napao. This noble lady who was known as the best lady in Europe and had the title of princess was not just famous. Not only did she become the speaker of the sage parliament that specialized in studying the godslayer when she was only 16 years old, but she also once joined hands with the paladin Paul Brantley of the Copper Black Cross to fight against the Black Prince Yurek, who was a godslayer and had repeatedly repelled the demon king in fields other than force. Coupled with the beautiful appearance and elegant temperament that seemed to have come out of the Middle Ages, if there was a ranking in the world that integrated the advantages of women in all aspects, then this girl would definitely be the first on this ranking. Therefore, in terms of fame alone, Alice was not under the demon king who killed the god. Her beauty and wisdom were things that people in the magic and curse world all over the world knew. Being noticed by such a big shot, Yoli, a simple girl, was inevitably a little nervous, and Hui Na's performance was a little strange. Only Noah knew that the fame was actually just an evaluation of Alice when she put on the mask of a good girl. Although this girl looked beautiful and had a transcendent temperament, her essence was that she was a naughty girl who liked to join in the fun and wanted to see the world in chaos. Therefore, for Noah, although Alice's beauty and elegance were not without, she was more playful and cute. In any case, in terms of female charm alone, Alice was indeed the best in the world. Therefore, Noah's attitude was quite casual. Based on the time I've been in this country, until I leave, they should be considered as my followers, right? In fact, only Hui Na was Noah's follower. As for Yoli, it was only because he had a good relationship with Noah that he was asked by the official history compilation committee to continue following Noah. While helping Noah, he could also use this relationship to appease Noah when Noah, the god slayer, was out of control. From this point of view, Yoli could be considered Noah's follower. Of course, Yoli's spirit vision was indeed quite outstanding. Keeping this girl by his side would sometimes be very helpful. In view of this, Noah did not object. Understanding this, Alice pursed her lips and smiled. Her every move was indeed elegant and graceful. First, it was Erica and Miss Liliana, and now there are two beautiful witches. It seems that Sir Noah has quite the potential to attract beautiful women. This is different from other god slayers who lack interest in women. Alice's words made Yoli and Hui Na involuntarily think of Luo Hao's matter again. Their pretty faces blushed slightly again, and they lowered their heads shyly. Noah, on the other hand, took a deep look at Alice and said with a faint smile. Maybe. After all, even the best women in Europe are attracted by me. I can indeed be proud of this. Saying such a sentence, Noah glanced at Alice's lips without a trace. Alice, who noticed Noah's gaze, suddenly reacted. Her pretty face was also red, and she said in a panic. At that time, Sir Noah, you were just messing around. It was not my intention. At that time. Noah made a teasing sound. At what time? At that time. Alice rolled her eyes at Noah awkwardly. Sir Noah, you are still so bad. You have been teasing ladies. You definitely have the potential to be a playboy. In the past, in Alice's home, after Noah helped Alice recover her health with the protection of the priest, before he left, he had also mischievously kissed Alice's lips, teasing the most outstanding princess in Europe. From that time on, probably in Alice's heart, Noah was a bad man who liked to tease girls, right? However, in fact, Noah rarely teased a girl like that. But in the face of Alice, a playful and cute girl who usually pretended to be obedient, Noah always wanted to tease her. Although, in terms of age, Alice was actually 3 or 4 years older than Noah. Who asked you to be so easy to tease? Noah shrugged. Moreover, the lips of the beautiful girl who is known as the Princess of Europe, I believe that as long as you are a man, you will want to taste them, right? This sentence made Yoli and Huina's faces turn red at the same time. Lips? Huina said in surprise and shyness. Has the king tasted the princess's lips? You are indeed the king. Not pure. Yoli also blushed and whispered softly. It's really too impure. Even Yoli and Huina blushed, and Alice, as the party concerned, was even more flustered. Please don't say this kind of thing in such a place. That is not the behavior of a gentleman. Alice glared at Noah and said loudly. Moreover, I am not here to be intimate with Sir Noah, but to talk about business. Is that so? Noah raised his eyebrows and ridiculed. In other words, after talking about business, we can be intimate, right? No. Alice fell into a state of confusion, which was rare for her. I didn't mean that. Seeing that Alice began to feel ashamed and angry, Noah, who felt that it was enough, smiled, reached out, and picked up the teacup on the table. After taking a sip of the hot tea, he went to the main topic. You are here to inquire about the god ancestor, Genivia, right? Seeing that Noah went to the main topic, Alice could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. Lord Noah, who do you think the last king is? Chapter 1450. Alice's question made Noah, who was about to bring the teacup to his mouth, pause slightly. Who was the so-called last king? In fact, this problem should have appeared much earlier. However, Noah already had a guess about the identity of the last king. No matter who it is, as long as they know about the existence of the last king, they will call him the last king to appear in the world, which is the god that will appear in the apocalypse. Noah drank the hot tea in the teacup in his hand, put the teacup on the table, and looked straight at Alice. The gods that will appear in the apocalypse can be found in various mythological systems, but the king that Lancelot will worship is only that one, right? The legendary king of Great Britain, known as the King of Knights, King Arthur. Alice said the name that was quite familiar to everyone. That king does meet all the conditions. In the book, The Death of King Arthur, which recorded the legend of King Arthur, there was a very famous tombstone inscription. Hic Jatec Arthur, Rex Quondam Rex Cafuturus King Arthur of the past and the future lies here. It meant that the legendary king would not stay in the past. The King of Knights would awaken in the future world and become a king again. This was not just a casual remark. In the legend of Great Britain in Celtic mythology, King Arthur was seriously injured in the last battle of his life. He was sent to Avalon, known as the Island of Fairies, and fell into a deep sleep to heal his injuries. In other words, in the myth, the King of Knights with the name of King Arthur did not die, but silently waited for the time to awaken. Therefore, many people who believed in King Arthur believed that one day, King Arthur would wake up in Avalon and descend upon this land again. Therefore, King Arthur was known as the king of the past and the future. In view of this, there were also people who advocated that when King Arthur returned to the world, it was likely to be the day of the apocalypse. At that time, as the king of legends, this king would save the world, save mankind, and restore peace to the world. In other words, King Arthur fully met the criteria of being the last king to appear in the world. In addition, the knight named Lancelot called the last king as his master. Guinevere, who used to be the goddess of earth and was King Arthur's wife in Celtic mythology, was also pursuing the last king. It was natural that King Arthur would be regarded as the last king. However, if this Lancelot isn't Lancelot, the Knight of the Lake in Celtic mythology, then the inference that the last king is King Arthur needs to be verified. At this moment, knowledge that matched the characteristics and nature of the last king flashed through Noah's mind. Noah rubbed his forehead. And if the last king is not King Arthur, then it would be a little difficult to find out who this god, the natural enemy of the god slayers, is. Just as Lord Noah said. Alice nodded. Because Lancelot's identity is a mystery, the true identity of the last king is also difficult to know. So, you also don't know the true identity of the last king? Noah frowned. Including Lancelot's true identity. Although it's very embarrassing, not only me, but also many famous witches, and even Alexander, who has been pursuing the Holy Grail and exploring the secrets of the last king, don't know the true identity of the two. Alice said. I'm afraid that Lord Noah doesn't know that whether it is King Arthur, the Knight of the Lake, or even the origin of the entire British legend, in fact, it was fabricated by Lord Guinevere. You. What did you say? Noah was shocked. You said fabricated. Fabricated myths. Yes. Alice seemed to want to emphasize the authenticity of her words and nodded heavily. We can be sure that the existence of King Arthur and even the myths related to him are all fabricated by Lord Guinevere. With that said, Alice began to explain. As everyone knew, the true form of the gods was actually the myth itself. If the gods that originally only existed in myths violated their own myths and appeared on earth, then this god would become the body of a rebel and be swallowed by madness, becoming a god of disobedience. There were myths, and then there were gods. Therefore, the gods that had appeared so far were all famous figures known by the world. And if there were no myths, there would naturally be no gods that didn't exist. For example, the great sage. If there was no such super famous figure in the Journey to the West, the world would not know of this figure's existence, then this god would definitely not appear out of thin air and descend on earth. Since ancient times, there have been thousands of myths born through the hands of human beings. Naturally, there is no lack of myths that suddenly disappeared or suddenly changed, Alice explained. And if the myths change, then the nature of the gods will also change. That is the law that the gods who are myths can never get rid of. Noah nodded in agreement. Take Athena for example. She was originally the queen of the divine realm who ruled the Mediterranean mythology. Later, the feminist society was denied, and the era of male sovereignty came. The myths were changed by men, and Athena, the queen of the divine realm, was degraded. At this point, the divinity of the Trinity queen of the divine realm was divided, and they became the wife of Zeus in Greek mythology, Metis, and her daughter Athena. The snake part became Medusa, and she was directly degraded to a banshee and was spurned by people. Fortunately, the myth of Athena as the queen of the Mediterranean had not completely disappeared. Therefore, Athena still had a chance to restore her identity as the queen of the Trinity and once again rule the divine realm. Therefore, the so-called last king was also not King Arthur. Because King Arthur's original form was the real last king. The huge amount of information made Noah close his eyes slightly. After pondering for a while, he opened them again and said to Alice, "Then, do you know that the god known as the last king is sleeping in this country?" "You? What did you say?" Alice finally lost her voice. Chapter 1451. At this time, among the 4 people present, except for Noah, Alice, Yoli, and Huina's expressions all changed. Alice was shocked because of the unexpected news. Yoli and Huina were surprised. Unlike Alice, Yoli and Huina didn't know what kind of existence the so-called last king was. However, from the conversation between Noah and Alice just now, the 2 witches at least understood some things. For example, the so-called last king was a very dangerous and powerful god. Otherwise, even Guinevere and Lancelot wouldn't worship him, and Black Prince Yerek had been pursuing this mystery. Another example was that the so-called last king was a god that would appear in the end of the world. Although they didn't know what the end of the world was, if the arrival of a god was based on such a condition, then it would be terrible. After all, the appearance of a god that didn't obey was generally accompanied by disasters brought about by his own attributes. If the sun god appeared, the whole world may be attacked by high temperature. If the sea god appeared, the whole world may be submerged by tsunamis. If this so-called last king was the last king to appear in the world, then did that mean that when this god appeared, it would bring about disasters of the same nature? For example, the end of the world. If the god sleeping in this country was such an existence, then why did the elders in secluded world try their best to conceal the existence of such a dangerous god, and even summoned the great sage, heavens equal to heaven to slay the dragon and the snake? The reason was completely clear. How could this be? Yoli said with some disbelief. Why would such a dangerous god be sleeping in this country? Grandpa and the others have been hiding the god. Is this last king? Even Huina said with some wry smile. It feels like things have become troublesome all of a sudden. As for Alice, she had recovered from her shock. She stood up abruptly and peered her pretty face in Noah's direction. She exclaimed with a face full of surprise. Is this news true? Noah couldn't help but laugh when he saw Alice's face, which was filled with surprise, suddenly appear in front of him. Although I only heard about it from others, based on what I've encountered so far, this news should be absolutely true. Hearing this, Alice's expression suddenly became absent-minded. I didn't expect that the last king was actually in this country. Then, Alice cheered up. Great, it was right to come here. Alexander definitely didn't know this news. In this way, I'm one step ahead. That guy will definitely be angry. As said before, in addition to being a god slayer, Black Prince Yerek was also an adventurer and explorer. Yerek's father had been pursuing the Holy Grail all his life. Even when he died of exhaustion, he still couldn't achieve his goal. Using this as an opportunity, Yerek embarked on the path of searching for the Holy Grail. Because of this, he coincidentally became a god slayer, completely opening the path of adventure and exploration. For this guy, the last king that Guinevere had been searching for was definitely a puzzle that could stimulate the greatest curiosity in his heart. Therefore, while looking for the Holy Grail, Yerek had been trying to solve the mystery of the last king. The former Guinevere tried to summon the last king by fabricating a myth, but the result was that he gave up halfway. The truth that led to the appearance of the legend of King Arthur was solved by Yerek. However, Yerek had never solved the real body and whereabouts of the last king. He could only find some clues. Alice couldn't help but feel excited when she thought about finding the whereabouts of the last king before her enemy. There's no time to lose. I have to quickly arrange for people to find the real sleeping place of the last king in this country. Otherwise, with Alexander's cunning, it won't be long before he finds out that the last king is in this island country. With such a sentence, Alice immediately got up, turned around, and prepared to run out without thinking. However, before that, Noah also got up and grabbed Alice's hand. Wait! Alice, who didn't expect that Noah would suddenly grab her, suddenly lost her balance and exclaimed. Following the strength of Noah's hand, she fell in the direction of Noah. Seeing this, Noah almost subconsciously reached out and hugged Alice, who fell into his arms. Ah, wow, this time, even Yoli and Huina exclaimed and opened their eyes wide. Ha! Alice, on the other hand, couldn't react in time. When she felt the warmth of Noah's chest and the strength of his arm around her waist, her pretty face blushed slightly. Seeing the scene of Alice falling into his arms with a red face, Noah was amused. He reached out and pinched Alice's delicate little nose. I say, no matter what, you are a senior who is a few years older than me. Can't you act a little more like an elder? Don't be so reckless. Otherwise, your title of princess will cry. Being treated by Noah with such an intimate action, Alice's face became even redder, and she retorted with an extremely unnatural look. No. No such thing. This is a very calm judgment. Since we know that the last king is on this island, then of course we have to find him as soon as possible. If it was so easy to find, then you wouldn't have to search for the last king for so many years. Noah said snappily. Besides, in this country, there is a group of old people who have lived in seclusion for who knows how many years. All these years, in order to hide the whereabouts of the last king, they have put in a lot of effort. In this way, how can it be so easy to find? The elders who live in seclusion. Alice was slightly startled and frowned. They hid the whereabouts of the last king. Most likely. Noah shrugged. Chapter 1452. This was a bustling airport with people coming and going. Although the location was some distance away from the hotel of the Western Heaven Palace, this airport was the closest airport nearby. In this bustling airport, Noah, Yoli, and Huina stayed in a corner. The people around them were all locals who came to pick them up. As the people who got off the plane arrived one by one, the people who came to pick them up also enthusiastically laughed and chatted with each other. They walked to the exit of the airport hand in hand. It was very lively. Noah, Yoli, and Huina also came to pick them up. Because of the bustling airport with people coming and going, Yoli naturally did not wear the witch costume anymore. Instead, she changed into a white hooded coat and dark gray trousers. Huina was still wearing the student uniform from an unknown school. She even carried the long cloth bag with the katana on her shoulder. Both girls obediently stayed about a step behind Noah, occupying the left and right sides like followers. However, the people they were going to pick up now were Noah's followers in the truest sense. Miss Erica and Miss Liliana. Yoli murmured. It is said that the two are prodigies of Italy. They are genius knights who achieved the rank of a grand knight at a young age. At the same time, they are also followers that the king got after becoming a god slayer. Huina smiled with some expectation. I'm really curious about what kind of people the king's followers are. While saying such a sentence, a strong competitive spirit emerged in Huina's eyes. It was the manifestation of fighting spirit when it was aroused. It seemed that Huina was not curious about what kind of people Erica and Liliana were, but what level of power they had. It was an extremely pure martial arts style. Noah, who did not notice this, looked ahead and spread his hands. If I were to describe what kind of people they are, I can only say that they are two very eye-catching people in various senses. At this moment, the noise in the entire airport suddenly weakened. Noah, Yoli, and Huina, who were talking, raised their heads at the same time and looked forward in surprise. Soon after, the three of them understood why the sound around them had suddenly weakened. Because in the airport, almost everyone turned their eyes in one direction, as if attracted by something, and subconsciously shut their mouths. Noah, Yoli, and Huina immediately turned their gazes and looked in the direction where everyone was looking. Over there were two young girls taking strong and forceful steps. Under the gazes of everyone present, they slowly walked over. I say, Erica, it's about time you picked up your pace. Who knows when you'll reach your destination if you keep walking like that? You're still so inflexible, Lily. It's rare to come to a country that you've never been to before. Shouldn't you take a good look at the surroundings first? That kind of thing can be done in the future. There's no need to specially do it now, right? You're right, but we don't seem to have a reason to be in a hurry. Anyway, the king must be living a better life than us. It doesn't make a difference whether we arrive earlier or later. It's not a matter of ability, but a matter of loyalty and responsibility. Although I know you've always lacked such sentiments, that's the king we serve after all. It's a dereliction of duty if you don't rush to the person you need to be loyal to as soon as possible. You say so, but in fact, you're in such a hurry because you can't help but want to see the king as soon as possible, right? No such thing. Do you think you can make me waver by saying such words? I won't be affected by you. Lily, before you say that, shouldn't you think about your own performance? Is your voice trembling? The beautiful voice like that of a mighty lioness and the mournful voice kept ringing, frequently attracting the attention of the surrounding people. A young girl with waist-length golden hair that was resplendent like a crown and a young girl with long silver ponytail like a fairy in the night. One of them had a majestic smile. The other looked a little flustered. Both of them walked forward in the space under the gazes of thousands of people as if there was no one else around them. As the two young girls were conversing in Italian, the people here basically didn't know what kind of conversation they were having. But in any case, in terms of appearance alone, Erica and Liliana had strong capital to attract attention, making the bustling crowd in the airport quiet down a lot all of a sudden. A beautiful blonde girl and a beautiful silver-haired girl. For the people in this country, such two foreign beauties were definitely enough to shock them. Not to mention, the two girls were both people with great temperament. One was confident and gorgeous, while the other was awe-inspiring and rigorous. In various senses, they were existences that could attract the attention of others. Judging from this point of view, although Yuri and Keiko had looks that weren't inferior to the two young girls, they didn't have the kind of eye-catching high-profile temperament. Instead, they tended to be low-key like Yamato Nadeshiko. Therefore, for Yuri and Keiko, Erica and Liliana were the kind of people who were quite dazzling. It was precisely because she considered that they would be so eye-catching that Alice didn't come with them. Instead, she stayed in the hotel. If the princess, who was known as the most outstanding woman in Europe, came to the airport in person, she would definitely become the most eye-catching existence in this airport, right? Even extremely dazzling people like Erica and Liliana couldn't compare. Of course, for others, Yuri and Keiko were the kind of people who were quite sophisticated. Under such circumstances, the two young girls, who were talking and walking as if there was no one else around, met Noah's eyes in the next moment. Both Erica and Liliana were slightly taken aback at this moment. Then, one of the two young girls showed an even more gorgeous smile, while the other regained her righteous expression. In the clear sound of footsteps, Erica and Liliana came in front of Noah. "Your Majesty," Liliana said in a serious tone. Liliana Kranikar has now returned. She was as serious as ever. "And me, Erica Browntree." The gorgeous smile on Erica's face didn't change in the slightest. "We haven't seen each other for a month, Your Majesty. Although I'm looking forward to hearing some touching words of reunion from you, I know that you're not the kind of person who is very emotional at all times, so I won't ask for anything." Erica was as confident and gorgeous as ever. The two knights, who had traveled with Noah for nearly half a year, finally returned to Noah's side again. Just as Erica said, Noah wasn't the kind of person who was very emotional at all times. Therefore, Noah could only smile bitterly and shrug at the two knights' announcement of their return in different styles. "Although that's the case, the timing of your return isn't too good. I reckon that you'll be involved in a big dispute all of a sudden." "If that's the case, it should be said that the timing is right," Erica said with a smile. "Appearing on the best stage is proof that even God doesn't intend to deprive me, Erica Browntree, of the opportunity to perform. No matter what the occasion is, my duty is to protect Your Majesty," Liliana said with a determined expression and tone. "As long as I can fulfill my duty, no matter what the occasion is, it'll be a good opportunity for me." A night full of confidence and a night full of honesty. Although the two knights spoke in different ways, the meaning behind their words was that they were willing to accompany Noah through mountains of swords and seas of fire. This made Noah feel helpless, but at the same time, the corners of his mouth unconsciously lifted slightly. At that moment, Hui Na, who was standing beside Noah, said with a sweet smile, "As expected of Your Majesty's official follower. Your words are so bold that even Hui Na is impressed." Hearing Hui Na's words, Erica and Liliana fixed their eyes on her. At that moment, no one expected that. This was the beginning of the dispute between the followers of Your Majesty. Chapter 1453. Noah didn't know if it was his illusion or not. However, Noah did feel it. At this moment, the surrounding atmosphere suddenly became tense. The knight from Italy and the witch from Japan looked at each other, and there were some sparks in their eyes at the same time. Hui Na stared at Erica and Liliana, and the smile on her pretty face was more or less different from usual. It was as if she was evaluating something, sizing up something, examining something, and confirming something. Looking at Erica and Liliana, Hui Na said with both shock and admiration. Hui Na can clearly feel it. Whether it is Miss Erica or Miss Liliana, although they are both very beautiful girls on the outside, they have a tempered aura. They are definitely not easy to deal with. Hearing Hui Na's words, Erica and Liliana looked at each other, and then looked at Hui Na again. "We have heard about you. I remember your name is Qingqiu Courtyard's Hui Na, right?" Erica accepted Hui Na's evaluation in an upright manner, and also glanced at Yuri, who had a blank look on his face as if he didn't know what was going on. "And you are Wanriga Yuri. Both of you are the witches of the Japanese magic world, and the followers of our king arranged by the History Compilation Committee, right?" "Yes. Yes." Yuri quickly saluted. "I am Wanriga Yuri, nice to meet you. I am Liliana Kranikar, belonging to the Bronze Black Cross of Milan, Italy." Liliana nodded politely. "During this period of time, thank you for taking care of our king. We sincerely apologize to you for the trouble he has caused." Hey. What do you mean by the trouble I have caused?" Noah felt that he should speak up. "I know my place, okay?" The word "know your place" is really not a compliment when used on a god slayer. Liliana immediately retorted. Besides, I heard everything from Erica. It is said that the great sage, Heaven's equal, was released by our king. Isn't that true? Noah was at a loss for words. Because you released the great sage, Heaven's equal, not only did God ancestor Genevia come to this country, even the Black Prince and sect leader Luohao came. Liliana sighed. It was the same when you were in Italy. You made your debut by killing two of the highest level gods of disobedience. Then, you met Athena. Using this as an opportunity, you attracted Marquis Warban, Archbishop Luohao, and Salvatore. When you were in Naples, you got entangled with the Black Prince, Lancelot, and Perseus. It seems that in terms of the attractiveness of being a king, you have indeed surpassed the rest of your kind. Wasn't that right? At present, there were only 7 godslayers. There were only 7 godslayers among the billions of people on Earth. However, every time Noah got involved in a dispute, he would attract more than 2 or 3 of his kind. Gods were as numerous as the stars in the sky. However, there were not many gods of disobedience on the ground. Otherwise, veteran godslayers like Warban and Luohao would have killed an astonishing number of gods, and the number of authorities they would have obtained would have reached an unimaginable level. The reason why this did not happen was that most of the gods were easy to defeat but difficult to kill, and it was also because the gods of disobedience on the ground did not matter much. Under such circumstances, every time Noah got involved in a dispute, there would be at least 2 or 3 gods of disobedience. He was really an anomaly. In this regard, Noah had nothing to say. Fortunately, Liliana did not know that Luohao had been completely devoured by Noah. Otherwise, this innocent but delusional knight would have exploded long ago. Erica, on the other hand, looked natural and unrestrained. Lily, you can't blame our king too much. Just like how beautiful girls attract bees and butterflies, individuals with great power will only be attracted by great power. From this point of view, doesn't it prove that our king is more outstanding than the other godslayers? I'm not denying that our king is outstanding. Liliana shook her head. I'm just lamenting that our king's life has always been so turbulent. Indeed. Erica looked at Noah with a faint smile. It's naturally a good thing for a man to be capable, but for a woman who is attracted to such a man, it will be quite difficult. I hope our king won't make too many girls cry in the future. The corners of Noah's mouth twitched, and he felt like his sore spot had been poked. At this moment, Hui Na expressed a different opinion. Is that so? But Hui Na prefers men like our king who don't bring too much boredom. Erica and Liliana were both taken aback by his words. As for Yoli, he was frightened by Hui Na's bold confession, and he pulled Hui Na's clothes with a blush on his face. Hui Na, what are you talking about? Hui Na is just telling the truth. Yoli won't like that kind of boring man, right? Hui Na said to Yoli as if it was a matter of course. Then, she clapped her hands as if she had thought of a good idea. However, if Miss Erica and Miss Liliana don't like our king, it doesn't matter. Hui Na will be our king's attendant anyway. It doesn't matter if Miss Erica and Miss Liliana are there or not. I'll repeat what I said here. Although Hui Na had received the education of a lady from a noble family, she was a natural girl who grew up in nature. Such a girl, even if she was the next head of the Meityo courtyard family, one of the 4 leading families in the Japanese magic circle, naturally didn't know anything about intrigue. Therefore, Hui Na's words were just pure thoughts in her heart. There was no malice in her words. However, in the ears of Erica and Liliana, this sentence was naturally full of provocation. Not to mention Erica and Liliana, even Yoli was a little surprised. Noah was also slightly taken aback. You're called Meityo Courtyard's Hui Na, right? Liliana frowned and looked straight at Hui Na. I can't pretend that I didn't hear what you said just now. Do you mean that I'm no longer of any use to our king? Ha! Hui Na didn't say that. Hui Na said with some confusion. Hui Na just said that both Miss Erica and Miss Liliana are great people. Hui Na can clearly feel this. However, you also said that if you're by our king's side, it doesn't matter whether we're there or not, right? Erica raised her eyebrows and put on an imposing smile like a lion. Can I take it that you're saying that you alone can beat me and Lily? Upon hearing this, Hui Na blinked and suddenly smiled. Actually, Hui Na doesn't know, but Miss Erica and Miss Liliana don't give Hui Na a sense of danger, so that should be it. You. Liliana immediately wanted to step forward, but was stopped by Erica. Erica stared at Hui Na intently, and at the next moment, she suddenly smiled. I, Erica Brantley, have never been looked down upon like this since I was born. It's really a fresh feeling for me. But, Miss Hui Na, it's not up to you to judge a person's ability. Erica Brantley said. Erica's words made Hui Na's eyes light up, and the smile on her face became wider and more enthusiastic. In other words, Miss Erica, are you going to spar with Hui Na? Hui Na. Yoli finally panicked. Noah finally frowned, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he watched quietly from the side. Under such circumstances, Erica shrugged her shoulders. Exchanging swords is also a knight's etiquette. I also want to confirm if Miss Hui Na is qualified to be our king's temporary attendant. Hui Na has no objections, Hui Na replied immediately. I'm willing to accompany you anytime. The battle between the attendants was successfully ignited. Chapter 1454. Whoosh! A whistling gust of wind blew past, stirring up a cloud of sand and dust. In an open space in the suburbs not far from the airport, Erica and Hui Na were facing each other with a distance between them. Both young ladies had smiles on their faces. However, that smile showed that the two girls had completely different temperaments. The smile on Erica's pretty face was naturally an extremely gorgeous and confident smile. On the other hand, the smile on Hui Na's pretty face was so innocent. However, no one could clearly see the scorching battle intent contained in their smiles. Whoosh! Another gust of wind blew past with a whistling sound, causing Erica and Hui Na's waist-length hair to sway up and down, making them look rather casual and unrestrained. Not far from the two of them, Noah, Yoli, and Liliana stood side by side as they stared at the two of them in a standoff. Why didn't you stop them? Yoli questioned Noah. If it's your order, Miss Erica and Hui Na should have obeyed. No, you're wrong, Wanligu, Liliana answered before Noah could. Even if it's the king's order, those two probably won't obey. After all, although one of them is a knight and the other is a witch, they are still warriors at heart. Noah stared at Erica and Hui Na who were in a standoff. Even if I stop them, it will only slow down the burning of the tinder. It's better to get rid of them once and for all. But, Yoli said anxiously. What if those two are injured? Don't worry, Noah answered directly. Not to mention injuries, even if they lose their arms, legs, or even their lives, I have a way to make them recover instantly. Is that so? Liliana was a little surprised. When did you master that kind of power? Upon hearing that, Noah glanced at Liliana in exasperation. When you didn't know. Naturally, this answer was not enough to make Liliana give up. However, before Liliana could launch her attack, Erica and Hui Na seemed to be tired of the confrontation and broke the silence. The Steel Lion and the Lionheart King, as my ancestor, hear the oath of Knight Erica Brantley. I am the successor of the Horn Flute, the descendant of the Black Warrior. My heart will not yield, my sword will never break. O Lionheart King, the essence of struggle is now in my hands. The time for the duel has come, Lionheart King. Amidst the awe-inspiring voice, a light knight's sword that resembled a western sword flashed out of the radiance of spells and landed in Erica's hand. Is that Miss Erica's weapon? Hui Na's expression didn't change. She just untied the cloth bag on her shoulder, opened the bag, and slowly pulled out a sharp katana. Then I'll use this to fight. Looking at the katana in Hui Na's hand, Erica said provocatively. That doesn't seem to be a particularly powerful weapon. Erica's Lion King's heart wasn't an ordinary weapon. It was a magic sword forged with special alchemy steel and other magic mediums. This sword had an attribute called indestructible. No matter how it was destroyed, Erica could restore it in an instant. Whether it was sharpness or power, it wouldn't decrease in the slightest. Moreover, it could cut through iron like mud. On the other hand, although the katana in Hui Na's hand was quite famous, it wasn't a weapon that even people in the magic and spell world would be amazed by. It can't be helped. Hui Na's original katana was destroyed by the king because it offended him. Hui Na can only use this. Hui Na pointed the tip of the katana at Erica from afar, maintaining a smile on her face. But this is enough. Anyway, my opponent is only Miss Erica. Is that so? Erica's eyes glinted. Then I don't need to show any mercy. The moment she finished speaking, a surge of spell power surged from Erica's body. Fly, boots of Hermes, a magic square array shrouded in red light spun out from the ground under Erica's feet. As if it had become a propelling force, Erica's figure turned into an afterimage and shot towards Hui Na. It was a magic trick called leap. It was a magic trick that could make one's body extremely light and even make one jump by stepping on air. After using this magic trick, Erica's body became extremely light and nimble. As soon as she stepped on the ground, she arrived in front of Hui Na in a flash like a slender bolt of lightning. Immediately after, the demonic sword in Erica's hand, which was called the Heart of the Lion King, drew a straight arc with a fierce force and pierced towards Hui Na's face. In the face of this fierce attack, Hui Na just narrowed her eyes and stared at the tip of the sword that was getting closer and closer. When the tip of the Lion King's heart was less than 10 centimeters away from Hui Na suddenly raised the katana in her hand and performed a sword draw slash. Clang! The steel sword and the katana collided in mid-air, causing a crisp sound and a burst of sparks. However, at this moment, the corners of Erica's mouth curled up. She shook the Lion King's heart in her hand and suddenly thrust it out. Chi! The sharp magic sword cut through the air, bringing with it a cold light. However, there was not only one cold light, but three. They formed a triangle and pierced toward Hui Na at the same time with cold arcs of light. Wow! Miss Erica is so powerful. In the face of Erica's attack, Hui Na first cried out in surprise, and then she quickly took 2 steps back. She clenched the Tai Dao in her hand tightly, and without the slightest fanciness, she let her strength surge into the blade and slashed down at the 3 sword lights that were thrusting at her. Swish! It was a simple slash, but it brought with it a bright saber light. Like a waterfall falling from the sky, it tore through the air and heavily hacked at the 3 brilliant sword lights. Bang! Accompanied by a low explosion, the 3 cold lights were shattered by the saber light at the same time, shattering like glass in the air. However, this scene made Hui Na's face turn solemn. Since the 3 sword lights had exploded, there could only be one meaning. The real attack was not in the 3 sword lights. Whoosh! Indeed, a sharp demonic sword shot out like lightning from behind the 3 sword glows that had exploded like glass. It drew a straight trajectory and shot out like an arrow that had left a bow. Seeing this, even Hui Na did not dare to underestimate Erica's sword attack. She quickly raised the katana in her hand and collided with Erica's magic sword. Clang! After the crisp sound of metal clashing, the figures of the 2 girls holding the magic sword and the katana began to intertwine. Clang! 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 The knight from Italy and the witch from Japan seemed to have turned into 2 dancing phantoms at this moment. They intertwined in the open space like ghosts, and their sabers and swords mercilessly slashed at each other's bodies. Clang! 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 The sword light and the saber light repeatedly collided with each other, causing intense sparks to fly everywhere. Every time they collided, it would set off waves of sharp strength chi. It was like an invisible waterfall that landed on the surrounding open space one after another, leaving cuts on the surface. Noah, Yoli, and Liliana's eyes were all focused on the two figures that intertwined like ghosts and swung their swords at each other. Their eyes did not move from the beginning to the end, not even for a moment. In such a situation, Yoli was so worried that he even twisted his hands together. Liliana's face turned solemn, and she whispered, "Hui Na of the Qingqiu Academy can actually use swordsmanship that is on par with Erica's. Her strength is really powerful. Erica probably can't do anything to her with swordsmanship alone. She can only use magic to determine the winner." Noah, who clearly heard Liliana's words, did not say anything on the surface, but he shook his head in his heart. Liliana's statement was correct. However, that was under normal circumstances. If Erica used magic, Hui Na would also use her trump card. It was a foul secret skill called God Descends. Chapter 1455. Clang. The sound of metal clashing and the bursting sparks were still reverberating in the space. Under the gaze of Noah, Yoli, and Liliana, Erica and Hui Na were carrying out an attack and defense that only masters of swordsmanship could do. The two sides exchanged blows, and the situation in the field was neck and neck. As Liliana said, Erica and Hui Na's attainments in swordsmanship were basically the same, so the two girls' attacks and defenses were quite perfect. However, that was only the current situation. Except for Liliana, Noah and Yoli both knew that Hui Na was still hiding her trump card. The secret technique named Invite God to Descend was a power that could even drive the personal disciple of the king of Wuxia, the best martial artist in the world, into desperation. Even Erica, who was known as a prodigy, probably couldn't deal with it, could she? After all, it was a skill that could borrow the power of the gods. Even if the borrowed power was only a few 10,000ths, it was still not something that humans could resist. Without the power comparable to that of a mythical beast or a god ancestor, it was impossible to resist. In Europe, knights with this level of power enjoyed the highest honor of paladin. This rank was only one level higher than the Grand Knight, but the gap between the two was like heaven and earth. For example, it was not strange for a person with the title of a paladin to kill a mythical beast or a god ancestor, but the existence of a Grand Knight could barely cope with it. Previously, in Italy, Noah and his companions had encountered many mythical beasts. At that time, even if Erica and Liliana joined forces, it was still very difficult to deal with a mythical beast. Now, Erica was alone facing Witch Yuan, who could exert the power comparable to that of a mythical beast at any time. Of course, as long as one was aware of the situation, no one would be confused by the evenly matched competition in front of them. Therefore, the current situation was only temporary. Next, it was the real beginning. Just as Noah was thinking about this, the situation in the field changed immediately. Clang! With a loud collision sound of a saber and a sword, Erica and Hui Na were both shaken to a distance by each other's strength. They raised their weapons and pointed at each other, resuming the confrontation. Miss Erica is really powerful. Hui Na's expression was still calm, but the smile on her pretty face became much sharper than before. Hui Na's feeling is right. You're also powerful. You deserve to be the next head of the Qingqiu courtyard, Erica replied with ease. You do have the ability to be our king's follower. But if that's the case, the words that you said to replace me and Lily aren't convincing enough. You're right. Hui Na nodded generously. Well then, Hui Na, we need to get serious. With that said, an indescribable aura began to spread from Hui Na's body. The spirit of words with all kinds of negative emotions that could make humans die filled every corner of the surrounding space along with Erica's voice, causing the temperature in this space to drop continuously until it reached a bone-chilling level. Become my power, grant me help as soon as possible. Save my soul from the sword, save me from the lion's teeth, save me from the horn of a buffalo. A pitch-black whirlwind gathered on the sword that Erica raised to the sky and gradually spun. However, it was not real wind, but a curse materialized in the form of wind. Let me tell you the name of the Lord. Praise him at the center of the world, convert and dedicate him. An explosive power surged from Erica's body. At this moment, the magic that Erica was using was called Calvary's Spirit of Words. It was a spell of despair and longing for redemption that ancient saints poured out to God before their deaths. It was a secret ritual that enjoyed the title of combat magic in Europe. When using this magic, just hearing the spirit of words chanted by the caster would blind the average person, and the physically weak would directly collapse. If the caster had the intention, she could even curse and kill everyone present who heard the spirit of words that contained the power of despair. Therefore, the moment Erica's spirit of words sounded, Liliana increased the spell power in her body to resist the despair and curse that came with it. Yoli's body stiffened, but Noah pulled her into his arms to prevent her from being affected by the spirit of words of despair. Hui Na widened her eyes slightly. Then, her eyes finally surged with excitement. That's amazing, Miss Erica. I didn't expect you to have such a trump card. Hui Na already feels threatened. That wasn't just a casual remark. The combat magic called Calvary's Spirit of Words had the power to inflict a certain degree of damage to gods and godslayers. It was the highest level of secret ritual that paladins below the rank of paladins could use. Okay. Hui Na's smile turned a little sinister. Hui Na won't hold back. As if intending to compete with the pitch-black whirlwind, a gray storm surged out of Hui Na's body. The storm of black and gray instantly swept across the field. On one side was a curse that could inflict a certain degree of damage to gods. On the other side was the power of wind that borrowed the power of gods to wield. The two storms wreaked havoc in the suburbs and expanded to the peak when Erica and Hui Na aimed their weapons at each other. If the two girls clashed directly like this, it would definitely cause a huge impact. Under such circumstances, even Liliana couldn't stand it anymore. She hurriedly spoke to Noah. Your Majesty. Please stop them. It's too dangerous if this continues. Indeed. Both Erica and Hui Na were no longer holding back. They had brought out their strongest trump cards. Next, no matter what the outcome was, Erica and Hui Na would definitely be severely injured to varying degrees. It was even possible that one of them would directly die. Although Noah had a way to resurrect Erica and Hui Na, that wasn't a reason for him to sit back and watch his companions die. Therefore, Noah, who felt that it was about time, nodded immediately. He reached out his hand and let the golden ripples spread out like water ripples around him. It was at this moment that something unexpected happened. A black shadow suddenly shot out from the other end of the space. Chapter 1456. That black shadow was like an extremely fine silk thread, and even those with excellent eyesight would find it difficult to detect its existence. However, that silk-like black shadow cut through space, bringing with it a subtle sound of breaking through the air that was directly buried by the raging black whirlwind and gray storm, and shot from the other end of the sky. That speed was abnormally fast. Even if it could not be compared to the godly speed that could even control time, it could still be said to be comparable to lightning speed. Coupled with the fact that the black shadow was difficult to catch, and did not carry any hostility, killing intent, or malice, even Noah only noticed its existence when the black shadow was only a few meters away from him. Of course, with Noah's ability, it was more than enough for him to react at such a distance. Be careful." At that moment, Noah was slightly shocked, and he pulled Liliana into his arms, along with Yoli, who had just been protecting her, into his arms, and grabbed a girl's slender waist with one hand, and with the tip of his foot on the ground, he quickly retreated. However, the target of the black shadow was not Noah and his party at all. Under the astonished gaze of Noah, the black shadow, like a bird in a cage, rushed straight into the wave-like golden ripples that had just fluctuated. Yes. The opponent's target was not Noah and his party at all, but the treasure vault called the Gate of Babylon. No. That's not right either. To be more precise, it should be said that the opponent's target was an item in the Gate of Babylon. Therefore, under Noah's astonished gaze, the silk-like black shadow rushed into the wave-like golden ripples, and immediately shot out from it. However, the black shadow that shot out from the Gate of Babylon was no longer in the form of a silk thread, but in the form of a bead. And in the bead-like black shadow, there was a fist-sized, obsidian-like badge. It was the Stone of Gorgon. The black shadow wrapped around the Stone of Gorgon rose into the sky like a dark meteor, and disappeared into the clouds in an instant. Looking at this scene, Noah seemed to understand something, and he raised his head and looked at the clouds. This sudden phenomenon naturally attracted the attention of Erica and Hui Na, who were about to charge into the fray. The two girls, who were about to strike with all their might, stared blankly at the black shadow that rose into the sky and disappeared into the clouds. After they reacted, they quickly put down the weapons in their hands and cancelled the spells of Golgotha's word and God's descent. The dark whirlwind and grey storm raging in the suburbs gradually dissipated. Erica and Hui Na both looked at Noah speechlessly, and they seemed to be caught off guard by this sudden change. As for Yoli and Liliana, they had no idea what was going on at all. They stayed in Noah's arms with a blank look on their faces, not reacting for a long time. Noah was the only one who was looking at the clouds in the sky. At this moment, the whole sky suddenly surged with darkness for no reason. It was the night. The bright sky in the daytime suddenly seemed to be accelerated by the flow of time, and was covered by the emerging darkness. In an instant, the bright day turned into a dark night. Soon after, a light and low, sacred and dark ballad resounded under the night sky. I sing the hymn of the Trinity Goddess, connecting the sky, earth, and darkness, for reincarnation and wisdom. I sing the song of the goddess that has been degraded. As a queen, I am regarded as a forbidden snake. For the queen's sigh, I sing the hymn of the goddess that has been broken in body and mind, humiliated by a noble father, for the humiliation of a loving mother. My name is Athena, the daughter of Zeus, the patron of Athens, an eternal virgin, the past, for the Mother Earth that gives birth to all, the past, for the Lord of the underworld who controls the darkness, the past, for the Queen of Wisdom who knows the scattered wisdom of the heavens. I swear, Athena is about to return to the original Athena. As the sacred and dark ballad resounded throughout the night, a radiant figure descended from the sky like a goddess. She slowly bloomed with brilliant white light in the night and slowly descended. Looking at the figure, Noah murmured as if he had expected it. So that's how it is, you've finally come to my side. Taking a closer look, it was a young girl about 17 or 18 years old. The young girl was wearing a Greek-style long white dress. Her entire body was emitting a brilliant white light, but the surrounding space was surging with waves of darkness. It was like a black fog that swept through the air, blowing her waist-length silver hair. She looked exceptionally beautiful. Her delicate face and beautiful appearance, even Alice, who was known as the most outstanding woman in Europe, could not beat her. Because, in mythology, this goddess was originally a virgin goddess famous for her beauty. The beautiful goddess floated under the night, looking down, but there was no one else in her eyes at all. Only Noah was looking at Noah. Looking at Noah standing on the ground, the beautiful goddess seemed to be looking at something special, like looking at a sweetheart, or simply looking at a fat prey, and she let out a charming laugh like a silver bell. I know, my fated one, you have a keen intuition and can find any enemy, but there is a limit to the distance. In order to retrieve the snake, I have been trying not to stimulate your senses, keeping a distance as far away as possible, and hiding my presence, secretly waiting for an opportunity. Now, I have finally waited for it. The god relic called Gorgon stone had a deep connection with the goddess. Chapter 1457. Under the dark night, the beautiful goddess stood in the air as if she was facing the wind. Her white and silver waist-length hair fluttered in the wind like the moonlight. The scene was exceptionally beautiful. Looking at Athena, who was floating in midair under the night sky, Noah didn't expect to reunite with her under such circumstances. After all, you are Athena. I thought you would definitely challenge me openly to take the power of the snake back from me. Noah looked straight at Athena. But, I didn't expect the result to be like this. If the situation allows, I wouldn't want to do this either. Athena seemed to agree with Noah's feelings and shook her head regretfully. If it's possible, I would also like to taste the fate between us bit by bit, and then slowly reap the results. But now, the situation doesn't allow me to continue like this. The situation doesn't allow. Noah was slightly taken aback and asked in confusion. What do you mean? Athena fell silent. After a while, she turned her head and looked into the distance as if she was looking at an existence that couldn't be captured by the naked eye. Ever since I sensed the aura of the snake and came to this land at the end of the east, I can often feel the restlessness in the air. That is a sign that this land is about to become chaotic. Athena was the goddess of wisdom and the goddess of war in charge of war. As the goddess of wisdom, Athena had the ability to predict the future and was wise enough to predict the future. And as the goddess of war, Athena could feel the arrival of war and disputes at any time. Now, the goddess who had recovered the identity of the ancient Trinity Queen of the divine realm asserted in an indiscernible but incomparably certain tone. The hero sleeping on this land is about to wake up and start the war against the demon king and the god slayer again. The part of me that is the goddess of wisdom told me so. Athena's words made Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Kira look at each other. Noah was silent for a while and sighed. As expected, you know that the last king is sleeping on this land. I am indeed aware of this matter. Athena retracted her gaze from afar and turned her attention back to Noah. So, I came to find you, and did not hesitate to use this method to take back the power of the snake that belonged to me, and fulfill the fate between us. Is that so? Noah shrugged. Although I can more or less guess why you suddenly became so anxious, let me ask you the reason and confirm a little. Since you've already guessed it, why are you still asking me when you already know the answer? How disrespectful to the goddess. If it was anyone else, I definitely wouldn't let them off so easily, but since it's you, I won't be angry, Athena replied while saying such ambiguous words with her beautiful face. This concubine has said before that as this concubine's fated enemy, this concubine will not let you die in the hands of that man. Letting you return to the earth is this concubine's responsibility. This sentence made Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Kira's hearts sink slightly. The meaning of Athena's words was quite obvious. This goddess of wisdom believed that once the last king was awakened, then Noah would definitely not be able to defeat him, and there was even a possibility of him surviving. Therefore, after sensing that the last king might be awakened at any time in the near future, Athena was anxious to take back the god relic of the Gorgon stone in such a sudden way, restore her identity as the Queen of the Trinity, retrieve the highest level of god power, and challenge Noah. Granting life and death is the responsibility of this concubine as the god of the underworld. Returning to the underworld that I am in charge of is equivalent to returning to the embrace of this concubine who is also the goddess of the earth who gives life. Athena looked like a girl who was expressing her love to her sweetheart, looking at Noah with burning eyes. So, Noah Dole, this concubine will take you into the underworld that I am in charge of, grant you death, and make you my property. Be prepared. As soon as she finished speaking, a surge of curse power gushed out from Athena's body. Although the power of the curse was not as strong as that of the great sage, heaven's equal, who was supported by the universe and the stars, it was strong enough to compete with the highest-level gods like Welslana, Mercato, and Perseus, whom Noah had fought before. This was the true strength of Athena, who had retrieved the power of the Trinity. Rumble. Under such circumstances, the ground where Noah and the rest were standing began to tremble slightly. Both Erica and Liliana reacted almost immediately. "O Leonheart King, show me the essence of the struggle now, my wings, become the steel of the phantom blade. Master Silver Craftsman, grant me power," the two knights chanted at the same time, holding the heart of the Lion King and Master Silver Craftsman in their hands. One of them stepped forward and stood in front of Noah. As if intending to protect Noah, he pointed the sword in his hand at Athena, who was in midair. Seeing this, Huina finally reacted. Her usually innocent face more or less showed a trace of annoyance. As soon as they sensed the possibility of a battle, Erica and Liliana immediately went into battle mode, standing in front of Noah fearlessly to protect Noah. That was the action that the true followers of a king should take. After traveling together for nearly half a year, Erica and Liliana had developed the awareness to become Noah's sword and shield at any time to protect Noah. Compared to Erica and Liliana, Huina, who was confident that she would not lose to the two knights from the beginning, was quite weak in this aspect, which fully reflected the gap between them. This gap was undoubtedly equivalent to telling Huina who was the most suitable person to be Noah's follower. It was because of this that Huina, who was previously very confident that she could replace Erica and Liliana, was a little annoyed. Perhaps he had sensed Huina's annoyance. Noah's gaze did not move away from Athena, and he spoke softly to Huina without turning his head. "Huina, I'll leave Wanli Valley to you." "Yes, King." Huina's expression finally relaxed. She turned sideways and came in front of Yoli, holding her tachi, and also became alert. "Mr. Noah." Yoli poked his head out from behind Huina and spoke nervously. Then I, Wanli Valley, I'll leave the task of contacting Mr. Gonzue to you. Tell him the situation here and let him be prepared to deal with the aftermath." Noah did not hesitate to assign the task to Yoli. "Also, if you see anything with your spirit vision, remember to tell us." "Yes." Yoli showed a determined expression and took out his mobile phone. At this moment, the trembling of the ground suddenly stopped. This was because the ground in front of Noah and his group had unknowingly bulged in several places and gradually squirmed and distorted. The next moment, the squirming and distorted ground transformed into 3 giant snakes that were comparable in size to high-rise buildings. They hissed in the direction of Noah and his group. The air vibrated instantly. Looking at the 3 giant snakes, Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Huina's group of 4 girls all had solemn expressions. Divine beasts. There are 3, Athena, who had recovered her full strength, summoned 3 divine beasts in a short moment. If humans wanted to summon each divine beast, they would need to gather at least 30 magicians or conjurers of the highest level to hold a large-scale ceremony and spend a very long time to successfully summon them. However, Athena summoned 3 divine beasts with just a raise of her hand. This was the difference between the god of disobedience and ordinary humans. "Go, my followers." Athena, who was suspended in mid-air, ordered the 3-headed giant snake loudly. "Devour all the followers of my old enemy." The 3-headed giant snake's eyes suddenly revealed a fierce light. With a momentum that seemed to be able to shake the earth, it let out a long hiss and rushed out to attack Noah and his group. The battle was about to start. Chapter 1458. Rumble. Amidst the tremors of the earth, 3 huge snake monsters as tall as skyscrapers crushed the fragile ground. While plowing a trail on the ground, they charged in the direction of Noah's group. That scene was as if several tall mountains were closing in on them. The momentum was extremely terrifying. Looking at the 3 gigantic snakes charging toward them with great momentum, a cold glint flashed in Noah's eyes. Traces of curse power surged from his body. But just as Noah was about to attack, Erica and Liliana stopped him at the same time. "Your Majesty, leave this to us for now," Liliana said in a stern voice. "Please save your strength to deal with Athena. It's just a divine beast. It's making a mountain out of a molehill to send a god-slaying demon king," Erica also said in a gorgeous and relaxed tone. "Right now, it's probably just Athena's probing. Or maybe Athena is trying to adapt to her newly recovered strength and is testing her skills. So, as our trump card, you can't expose yourself so easily." After saying that, Erica and Liliana looked at each other and nodded. Erica raised the Lion King's heart in her hand and chanted Calvary's words again. "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. Lord, why have you forsaken me?" The despairing words reverberated in the air once again, causing the surrounding temperature to drop instantly. When Erica used Calvary again, Liliana also raised the Silver Grandmaster in her hand and made a declaration. "People, listen to David's lament. Why do heroes fall? Why do war machines vanish?" The words that were completely different from Erica's echoed, causing the surrounding air to slowly turn cold. This cold feeling was very similar to the Golgotha's word that Erica used. But the power contained in the 2 words was completely different. Erica's words contained the despair and hatred of someone who had been driven to a dead end. Liliana's words, on the other hand, were filled with sorrow that seeped into one's heart. It was as if the people of the world were lamenting and crying for a great figure who had passed away. It was very heart-wrenching. "Mountains of Gilboa, I pray that sweet dew rain will descend upon you. Offer the sacrifices that thirsty beasts yearn for. Abandon yourself and become the shield of the brave warriors of the other side, the shield of soul. Inject fat into you and dedicate yourself to this place." Under the sorrowful spirit of words, a blue radiance flickered on Liliana's Silver Grandmaster. At this moment, the magic that Liliana used was the same as Electra's Calvary spirit. It was the highest level combat magic that could be learned under the rank of Holy Knight, the Song of Bow. If Erica's Calvary was to express the despair of a dying saint, then Liliana's Bow Song was to express the lament of a great hero who had passed away. Regardless of which side it was a combat magic spell that could bring a certain degree of damage to the divine capital and make the gods feel pain. Of course, although combat magic spells of this level could bring harm to the gods, the damage was very limited. Moreover, if it couldn't hit the target, it would be meaningless. For the gods, this kind of magic spell was only slightly pleasing to the eye. It could break through the curse resistance of the god slayers and the god of disobedience and thus take effect, but it didn't mean that it could bring about a threat. However, it was nothing to the god slayers and the god of disobedience, but it was a threat to the divine beasts to a certain extent. Therefore, Erica gathered the power of the Lion King's heart that carried despair and stabbed it out at the speed of lightning, slashing through one of the giant snakes. Slash! With a tearing sound, the giant snake's scales and skin were cut open, and a large amount of blood sputtered out. The giant snake let out a loud hiss, and the murderous glint in its eyes intensified. It turned its head and charged in Erica's direction. At this time, Liliana suddenly jumped up like a swallow and cut through the sky. She waved the Silver Grandmaster Craftsman in her hand that contained the power of grief. Like an arrow, she flew past quickly. Slash! With another tearing sound, the other giant snake's eyeball was pierced through, and it let out a loud scream that shook the air. The second giant snake also turned its body and chased after Liliana, who was leaping back and forth in the air like a bird. Only the last giant snake was left, and it still charged in Noah's direction without hesitation. However, at this moment, a light voice sounded behind Noah. In the morning fog of the grassy plains, the bottom of the foot bag gradually became wet. After a long journey through the Su Changsha plains, and then crossing the White River Pass, although it was only a small portion, the unique aura of a god rose from Noah's back. Under the heavens, Ji Ci, the food of the country, Ding Ci, etc. My wife is the ruler of the country, commanding the soldiers, calling for Ji Ci to come down, breaking thousands of plates. People will be in harmony, not serving as officials, the country will be in harmony with Ji Ci. The ethereal word spirit rippled in the dark night, causing a violent gust of wind to rise from the battlefield. It turned into countless sharp, invisible blades that rushed into the sky before descending, slamming heavily into the remaining giant snake. This time, a series of tearing sounds rang out one after another. The giant snake let out a painful hiss as its body was continuously sliced by the invisible wind blades. In an instant, its flesh was lacerated and blood flowed out. Then, Hui Na, with her katana in hand, leaped forward and came in front of Noah. With her back to Noah, she shouted loudly, "Don't forget about me." After saying that, Hui Na rushed out with a whirlwind all over her body. Susanu was the storm god. After borrowing the power of the storm god, Hui Na could also use a small portion of the storm god's authority to manipulate the wind. Its power was even stronger than that of the spirit of speech and the song of Bao. Just now, if Erica and Hui Na continued to fight, the final winner would definitely be Hui Na. Hence, while Erica and Liliana were struggling to deal with one of the divine beasts, Hui Na was already entangled with the remaining giant snakes. For a while, the three girls were evenly matched with the three divine beasts. However, no one knew that the girls were in a bad situation. For example, Erica and Liliana's Calvary's word and Song of the Bow were gradually declining in power. After all, although the two combat magic skills were exquisite and could even break through the curse resistance of the God Slayer and the God of Disobedience, that was only the effect, not the power. As the highest level of combat magic under the rank of Paladin, although it could threaten the divine beasts, it was not enough to annihilate them. If they wanted to annihilate the divine beasts, Erica and Liliana were not strong enough. Unless the two of them could reach the rank of Paladin and learn the highest level of combat magic that only the highest rank of Paladin could learn. Otherwise, only by joining forces could they have a way to deal with a divine beast. In a one-on-one fight, Erica and Liliana's power was still a distance away from that of the divine beasts. Although Hui Na was evenly matched with the divine beasts by relying on the god's descent, she gradually lost her strength and began to slow down. Using the god's descent would put a burden on the body. If Hui Na couldn't deal with the divine beasts before her body couldn't move, she would definitely lose. Therefore, the situation was quite critical for the girls. This made Athena, who was floating in the air, let out a charming laugh. This concubine's fated enemy. It seems that your maidservants are no match for this concubine's family. In the competition between my subordinates, the one who wins will be this concubine. Hearing this, Noaya did not have the time to speak when a dim light flashed in the eyes of Yuli by the side. This caused her face to be filled with joy as she cried out, "Everyone! Please attack the tail of the snake." That is the connection between the divine beast of the snake and the earth. The place where it obtains essence and life. Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na's eyes lit up. Chapter 1459. Bam! Accompanied by a loud explosion, the ground suddenly burst open, raising a thick cloud of dust and gravel. Amidst a series of loud noises, it smashed into the ground. It was the damage caused by the three giant snakes crashing into the ground with their huge bodies. With the three giant snakes as the center, the powerful shockwaves spread in all directions. In the shockwaves, Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na retreated in 3 different directions from the thick sand and strong shock waves, and the curse power in their bodies surged to the peak. The first person to move was still Erica. Steel Lion, I entrust you with the spirit of the words of Sai and Fury. Bathe in the holy blood of the last phase and manifest Holy Spear Longinus. While retreating, Erica raised the Lion King's heart in her hand and poured all the curse power in her body into it. Suddenly, the Lion King's heart that had Golgotha's spirit emitted a dazzling red light. It continuously changed shape within the red light, and finally, it turned into an extremely luxurious-looking spear. Hiya! Erica yelled. She gripped the spear tightly, pulled it over her shoulder, and threw it out with all her might. The glowing red spear immediately turned into a flash of light. Like a red meteor, it cut through the space and directly shot in the direction of the giant snake. At the same time, Liliana raised the Grandmaster's silver sword in her hand in midair. Jonathan's bow, the hero's weapon that is as fast as a vulture and as strong as a lion. Run and destroy your enemy. The magic sword named Silver Grandmaster Craftsman blossomed with a blue light, and in the end, it transformed into a longbow that flickered with blue light. Wielding her longbow, Liliana pulled the bowstring in the direction of the giant serpent. An arrow flashing with blue light appeared on the longbow. The tip of the arrow was aimed at the giant serpent that was charging towards the ground. Shoot through. In the next moment, Liliana loosened her grip on the bowstring. As a result, the arrow that was flashing with blue light shot out and turned into another blue meteor. It also cut through the space and shot towards the direction of the giant snake with a sharp piercing sound. Although Hui Na was 1 step slower than the knights who had a tacit understanding, she didn't want to be outdone. She raised the Susanu's godly power in her body to the peak, causing a storm to surge out from her body like a tornado and cover her whole body. My back to you is the king of the country, true wood stands, unbreakable mountain oversteps, Baikan, and shoot to see my Harano, imperial residence, and seat. In the words that sounded like a ballad, the storm that covered Hui Na's entire body surged towards the tachi in his hand, spinning wildly on the blade of the tachi. Take this. Immediately, Hui Na held the tachi that carried a raging storm. Her entire body suddenly swept out, turning into the 3rd meteor, rushing in the direction of the giant snake. Whoosh! Amidst the almost identical sounds of breaking through the air, 3 meteors streaked across the sky, drawing a nearly perfect arc in space. They flickered with brilliant light and landed with extreme precision on the tails of the 3 giant snakes. Poochie! In the tearing sound, the spear flashing with red light, the arrow blooming with blue light, and the tachi that carried the storm pierced through the tails of the 3 giant snakes and even directly came out of their bodies. At this moment, the 3 giant snakes stopped abruptly. The red light in their eyes dimmed little by little. Even their bodies began to petrify and turned into snake-shaped statues. Bang! In the explosion, the 3 petrified giant snakes exploded and turned into gravel all over the sky. They scattered on the ground and disappeared without a trace. In the storm, Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na retreated as if riding the wind and waves. After a while, they landed on the ground. The whole place suddenly became quiet. Seeing that Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na had all defeated their divine beast-level opponents safely, Yuli breathed a sigh of relief. Although Yuli didn't directly participate in the battle, he had made a great contribution. Just now, if Yuli hadn't successfully triggered spirit vision and seen the weaknesses of the 3 divine beasts, it would have been absolutely impossible for Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na to defeat the 3 divine beasts unscathed. Knowing this, even Athena couldn't help but cast her eyes in Yuli's direction. She glanced at Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na, and finally fixed her eyes on Noah. You seem to have a group of capable warriors and witches under your command. Really? Noah smiled. It's really an honor to be praised by Athena, who has trained many excellent warriors. Athena was known for her wisdom and beauty, but when it came to training warriors, she had great authority. In Greek mythology, there were legends that Athena had trained many famous warriors. Among them, even the hero Perseus, who killed the snake-haired demoness Medusa, was ordered by Athena to go to the island of the snake demons to slay dragons and snakes. Therefore, Athena's words were undoubtedly more convincing than anyone else's. Just like a certain anime that had been popular for a long time, didn't it also mention a group of fighters who were constantly fighting under Athena's command like unkillable cockroaches? There was no way to use the same move twice against them, and there was still a certain power called the little universe that burst out from them. That was enough to prove how strong Athena's divinity as the god of war was. But it was also because of this that the performance of the group of girls was just barely acceptable to Athena. It's a great achievement for humans to challenge the followers of the gods as mortals and win, Athena said to Noah with a relaxed smile. It's just that those girls have reached their limits, right? Upon hearing that, Noah couldn't help but turn his gaze in the direction of Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na. He saw that Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na were panting heavily, their slender shoulders heaving up and down. In order to deal with the divine beast-level opponents, Erica and Liliana's spell power was almost exhausted. They couldn't even maintain the combat magic of Golgotha's spirit and a Song of the Bow, causing the red and blue lights flickering on the Lion King's heart and Silver Master Craftsman to gradually disappear. Hui Na, who had used God's Descent, was a little unsteady. She stood with difficulty and was in a rather bad state. In fact, Noah had already foreseen this outcome. Therefore, Noah didn't show any troubled expression. He raised his head, looked at the high and mighty Athena, and spoke indifferently. Even so, I'm still the winner of this competition between my subordinates. Upon hearing Noah's words, Athena's eyes flickered, and the smile on her beautiful and charming face became a little cold. It's just a playful competition. You're my fated enemy. Don't tell me you think you can win against Athena, who is in charge of war. No matter how small the war is victory, and defeat is defeat, Noah said with a half-smile. Or could it be that the famous Athena is not even willing to accept this level of victory? The smile on Athena's face slowly disappeared, and she stared at Noah speechlessly. Noah didn't evade and looked straight back. The expression in his deep, dark eyes remained unchanged. Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Hui Na held their breaths. An oppressive atmosphere began to spread in the air. After a long time, Athena suddenly sighed and smiled sweetly. It's also my mistake to reveal the competition between my subordinates without any consideration. Alright, I'll let you win this time. But you have to remember, you're my fated enemy. The victory between you and me has only just begun. Athena's voice slowly sounded. I'll prepare a suitable battlefield to fight you. When the time comes, it will be a head-on battle between you and me. After saying that, a gust of darkness emerged around Athena, and she disappeared in an instant. Noah looked in the direction where Athena disappeared and didn't speak for a long time. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.